Hello, my friends. Today, everyone is actively discussing the talks between Washington's representative Whitcoff and Putin, and already today, some early information about the outcome of those talks has surfaced. According to reports, Whitcoff told Putin that the fastest way to reach a ceasefire would be to hand over 4 Ukrainian regions to Russia. He allegedly made this suggestion to Trump after speaking with Putin's ally Kirill Dmitriev. However, Keith Kellogg, who was also present during the conversation, opposed this idea. He stated that while Ukraine is open to negotiations, it will never agree to unilaterally give up full ownership of its territory. This shows that Putin won't stop until he gets what he wants, and if Trump can't push Putin toward a truce, then we can confidently say this war will drag on for a long time. Friends, I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you believe Putin would actually stop and start negotiation with Ukraine to end this war? Because even their first statements show he wants the war to end only on his terms. And that would mean complete capitulation for Ukraine. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Also, a new comment from Kellogg has already emerged. He proposed stopping the war along the current front line. US Presidential Envoy General Keith Kellogg suggested dividing Ukraine into zones of control, similar to the post Berlin, according to the Times. He proposed that British and French forces could control western Ukraine, Russian forces would hold the east, and a demilitarized zone guarded by Ukrainian troops would lie between them. He suggested the Dnipro River become the dividing line with an 18-mile wide demilitarized zone. This idea assumes Ukraine would have to give up territory in the east currently held by Russia. At the same time, the Kremlin has rejected the idea of NATO peacekeepers, and Kellogg's proposal likely won't be accepted by Moscow. But as we understand, Russia isn't agreeing to that, and Ukraine is still hoping that US will manage to reach some kind of deal with Putin. Now, let's move on to the situation on the front lines because the war is far from over. But before I dive into all the details, just a quick reminder. Don't forget to support the videos with a like. It really helps boost Ukrainian content. And if you are new to the channel, feel free to subscribe so you never miss an update. Now, let's start the overview with what's happening on the border. In the Kursk direction, Russian forces continue storming and shelling Ukrainian positions in an attempt to fully clear out their side of the border. This situation here is extremely difficult, and Ukrainian forces are holding on to the last two border villages. For now, there haven't been any changes in the past 24 hours, but heavy assaults are ongoing. At the same time, even though Ukraine hasn't officially confirmed any Russian advances into Sumy region, Russian sources are already loudly claiming further progress in that region. For 2 days in a row, they've reported movements near the village of Zhuravka, and according to preliminary reports, the gray zone near Basivka has expanded. So, yes, they're already trying to push further into Sumy, and the situation remains incredibly tense. In the Belgorod direction, shelling continues. Meanwhile, in the border area, Russian forces are actively using FPV drones and claim they are gradually pushing Ukrainian forces off Russian territory. Unfortunately, there is no official confirmation of this yet, but what is clear is that the Ukrainian side is currently not conducting any new offensive actions, and for now, the front line there remains unchanged. In the Kharkiv direction, the Russians continue their shelling, but attacks near the village of Gleboka have temporarily stopped. In Vovchansk, the fighting hasn't ceased, but Ukrainian forces are managing to repel all attacks, and there have been no changes there either. At the same time, near the village of Tykhe, Russian forces released footage showing them targeting and damaging Ukrainian equipment. They're trying to use the roads to strike vehicles transporting soldiers, so even though the front line hasn't shifted in this area, that doesn't mean things are calm. Unfortunately, Ukraine is also suffering losses. And it's important to remember today FPV drones are destroying more manpower than traditional gunfire. This war has truly entered a completely new phase. Now let's move straight to the Pokrovsk direction. The Russians are continuing the aggressive push near Udachne, and there are also confirmed breakthroughs toward the mine. Fighting is ongoing near Zvirove with assaults on Lysivka and Yelizavetivka and attempts to break through to Tarasivka. A large number of attacks continue, and FPV drones are actively used in the area. However, despite all this, there have been no changes along the front line over the past 24 hours. For now, Ukrainian forces are managing to hold the defense. In the Kurakhove direction, the situation is very difficult. Russian forces are pushing toward Kotlarivka, storming Preobrazhenka, and launching attacks in the fields near Troitsk. Heavy fighting also continues for control of Konstantinopel, despite repeated Russian claims that they fully control the village. At the same time, for the second day in a row, attacks are ongoing on the village of Bahatir. The Russians are actively using FPV drones and artillery there. So the situation is tough, and holding the defense here is extremely challenging. The intensity of Russian offensive actions remains very high. In the Velyka Novosilka direction, Russian forces are attempting to break through near Vilna Pole and continue shelling the area. However, over the past 24 hours, there have been no significant changes, and all the attacks have been successfully repelled. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, a large-scale Russian offensive have essentially stalled, while they still carry out a few assaults each day. All of them have been unsuccessful. Today, they once again tried a breakthrough toward the town of Orikhiv and continued shelling the area. Despite this, the front line remains unchanged, so any talk about a rapid Russian advance towards Zaporizhzhia in the near future is clearly premature. They simply don't have enough forces for that at the moment, although they are still pulling in reserves. In the Kherson direction, attacks on the islands continue, but once again, Russian forces have been unable to make further progress, and this situation remains unchanged. All Russian groups attempting to advance are being successfully neutralized. Now let's move to the Toretsk direction. Where the Russians are throwing in a maximum number of reserves in an attempt to advance and potentially encircle Konstantinivka. Today, fighting continues in Toretsk and near Druzhba, but the most intense developments are happening further south. Last week, Russian forces managed to capture Pantelemonivka, and yesterday they reported taking control of Alexandropol, along with a significant number of positions in the fields along the section of the front. So the advance here is quite substantial. Now they are storming Katerynivka, also Sukhabalka and Valentinivka. They've also begun pushing from the New York area across the fields toward Romanivka. Heavy shelling is ongoing in this entire zone. Overall, the Russian goal here is to straighten the front line and move toward the highway leading to Konstantinivka. Essentially, they aim to break through into the rear of the city. They understand that the Ukrainian forces are heavily entrenched here, and we're expecting a Russian offensive from the Chasiv Yar direction. So now the Russians are trying everything to punch through this area and get behind the Ukrainian lines. Unfortunately, it's already been reported that the village of Kalynove has fallen under Russian control, and the situation here is deteriorating rapidly. Myrnograd Toretsk direction update. In the area of Valentinivka, Russian FPV drones are highly active. There are a lot of them. Russian forces also made gains to the west of Pantelemonivka and are advancing towards Stara Mykolaiivka, though Ukrainian forces are still holding them off there. As expected, they've ramped up operations near Arkhangelsk and are pushing toward the village of Kalynove, which is now confirmed to be under Russian control. Only 2 kilometers remain to the neighboring village. They could use the reservoir to slip into the western part of Stara Mykolaiivka and approach Gnadivka from the south. In short, friends, a breakthrough of the Ukrainian defense has occurred in this area, and Russian forces are applying intense pressure across the board. In the Chasiv Yar direction, Russian forces are breaking through toward Bila Hora and Deliivka. The situation here remains complex, but for now, Ukrainian forces are managing to repel all attacks. There have been no significant successes for the Russians in this area for a long time. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are attempting to break through in the Serebryanka forest toward the village of Dronivka. They are also storming Grigorivka, Bilogorivka, and Verkhnyokamensky. However, just like before, they have had no success and their situation remains unchanged. In the Lyman direction, the situation is worse. Russian forces are periodically gaining some success, and today they continue their assaults on Zarychne, Yampolivka, Lipove, and Novomykhailivka. To the north, battles are ongoing for Kharkivka and they're breaking through toward Olhivka. The activity here is very high. However, Ukrainian forces are still managing to repel all attacks, and there have been no new breakthroughs by the Russians in the past day. In the Borova direction, attacks on Boguslavka and Novakruglякivka continue. The Russians are also trying to regain control of the village of Nadia. However, they have had no success, and the situation hasn't changed in the past day. In the Kupiansk direction, attacks continue in the area of Peshane, but there is no other significant activity. It can be said that the situation here has stabilized. In the Dvorichna direction, all attacks have stopped, and the Russians haven't achieved any success. Over the past day, the front line remains unchanged. And that's all from me. So please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching, and see you next time. Bye bye.